This video was pretty much inevitable. I know I've talked about a few video games on here, and by no means is Fire Emblem my absolute favorite, but it is one that I've been interested in for a very long time. Do want to mention again in words that if you're uncomfortable having situations of incest or pedophilia or pro-shipping detailed to you, maybe skip on this video. Otherwise, I will put another warning and a safe timestamp to skip to before we talk about it. Here we go. If you aren't knowledgeable about Fire Emblem or you haven't played it, maybe you know more about or have even played the game of chess. From a gameplay standpoint, Fire Emblem is absolutely rooted in chess. In 1990, the first game, Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, was released in Japan in August to be played on the relatively obscure Famicom system. Not initially meant to be a serious game, rather a passion project, creator Shozo Kaga was impressed with the game's success and would continue to work with Intelligent Systems on more games until around the 5th installment. Fire Emblem is best described as a tactical RPG in a fantasy setting. I'm talking like knights, dragons, whatever. The game operates on a turn-based system where you control an entire army, with a CPU controlling a rival army you must battle and defeat to win each level. You move each member of your army separately, allowing you to fully control what kind of tactics you'll employ. Each member is unique in what class they are assigned to and what weapon they are able to wield. Options for weapons include swords, lances, axes, bows, staves, and multiple tomes/magic types. There's really too many specific classes to go through, so basic ones include warriors, fighters, healers, mages, etc. There are also 4 different movement types, which affect how many spaces a character can move in one turn. Foot soldiers can move a medium amount of maximum spaces, with mounted and flying soldiers able to move a larger amount of maximum spaces. Armored soldiers are able to move the least of all. Each unit also has a unique set of statistics that impact their performance in battle. Each character would have varying strength, skill, speed, luck, defense, and resistance stats that would increase each time they leveled up. Characters would also be written to have distinct personalities that would shine through within conversational scenes in the game, like a visual novel. This arguably makes it so players can connect with their characters more personally. A little bit of a clever move, given that a staple of Fire Emblem is the fact that your characters can die permanently. Other than the main character who acts as the protagonist, no character deaths in your army will trigger a game over, unless it is noted as a defeat condition in a given level. So, for example, if you have 16 levels and 16 characters, you could technically lose a unit every level and still be able to fight in the final level with only your main character. It'll probably make the game so much more unnecessarily hard though. The way the game works makes it so you have to consider so many different things so many steps in advance, like who's gonna get hurt if they're placed where, who works better as defense and offense, what kind of soldiers make up the enemy army, stuff like that. It really is just like chess. As of 2023, Fire Emblem has seen 17 mainline games, 3 of which are just remakes of other previous titles. I'm just gonna go down the line and explain a few of the main characters and roughly what each installment is about. I literally do not have enough time in the world to go in depth for every one because there are just so many games, and each game has like 50 characters and 1,000 acts, and it's just better to experience them yourself if you physically can. Starting with the aforementioned grandfather of the series, Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light released on August 20th of 1990. The story follows the Altean prince Marth on a quest to take his place on the throne back after the titular Shadow Dragon Medius and his underling the Dark Mage Garneth exile him. He seeks out the sword Falchion as well as the Fire Emblem, a fabled shield, in order to do so. Pretty much your average fantasy story, this is probably actually one of the most straightforward stories in the series. Gaiden, the second installment of the series, released in Japan on March 14th of 1992. Keep in mind, all of these games' release dates are the Japanese release dates until I say so. Nothing happens until I say so. Not all of the games have been westernized, and actually it took quite a long time for them to be westernized at all. Gaiden was actually the last Fire Emblem game to be put out for the Famicom. This title is canonically set in the same world, set on another continent, Valentia, rather than Arcania. In this game, Valentia is torn by a two-sided politically fueled war. The princess of the kingdom of Zofia, Celica, who actually was also exiled like Marth, reunites with her childhood friend Alm, a simple village boy, in the hopes to put an end to the fighting, caused by 2 warring deities, Mila and Duma. Mystery of the Emblem, a partial remake of the first game, released on January 21st of 1994. The 2 parts of the game are referred to as books, with Book 1 being a remake of Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light. Book 2 has Marth defending his continent against the General Hardin, who, by influence of a dark relic, has been forcing Altean military conquests on other countries. The 4th installment, and the one that fans can get a little pretentious about, released by May 14th, 1996. Genealogy of the Holy War takes place on the continent of Jugdral, still set in the same world as Gaiden and Shadow Dragon in the Blade of Light. It's supposed to take place hundreds of years before the first installment. Basically, a lot of fighting is going on between the 8 countries of the continent. During a counter-invasion, a soldier of one of the armies, Sigurd, meets a girl named Deirdre, who descends from the divine dragon Naga. I want to say that this far back in the series, Naga just refers to a race of human/dragon hybrids, but I'm not really sure. They inevitably fall in love, birthing a son, Seliph, with Deirdre's blood making her a key element to the benefit of the war, being able to kill the evil dragon Loptuus, who had spawned a similar war years earlier titled the Holy War. She is kidnapped and used to create a vessel capable of being a human host for Loptuus. At some point, Sigurd is framed for a murder and exiled, and then finds out what happened to Deirdre, who was forcibly wed to Lord Arvis, who kills him. This is the most long-winded story, so I'll try to wrap it up, but 15 years later, Deirdre dies to protect her daughter Julia from their son, the vessel Julius, and Seliph comes out of his forced hiding, joining with his own allies and Julia to finish what his father started. This entry is unique because you control Sigurd in the first half as your main character, and Seliph in the last. Thracia 776 is the 5th game in the Fire Emblem line of games, having been released on September 1st, 1999. This one takes place in that little 15-year gap in genealogy, where the main protagonist, Leif, gets involved in a somewhat related yet minuscule scuffle with some legions of evil. In the end, he does end up having some kind of barrence on the war, permanently protecting the Kingdom of Thracia from any danger to come. On March 29th of 2002, the first game in the series to be released on a handheld console, specifically the Game Boy Advance, the Binding Blade follows Roy, hailing from a new continent entirely, Alib. Roy is tasked with commanding the Kingdom of Lycia's army in the stead of his sick father, taking up arms against Zephiel, who wants to help eradicate humanity from Alib, giving it back to the dragons who once ruled over it. The Blazing Blade is a prequel to The Binding Blade, but is special because it is both the first Fire Emblem game to be westernized and has only the name Fire Emblem in the West, thus giving it essentially 2 names. It was released in Japan on April 25th of 2003, and in North America on November 3rd of the same year. The game follows Eliwood, Roy's father, and his friends Lynn and Hector, as they search for Eliwood's missing father, while at the same time taking down the agents of a dark society threatening Alib. Halfway through, the Sacred Stones released on October 7th of 2004 in Japan, and May 23rd of 2005 in the US. On a new continent, Magvel, siblings Erica and Ephraim set out to defend the rest of 5 kingdoms from one set on destroying the protective stones of each kingdom, which are responsible for keeping an ancient demon in prison. 2005 saw a new game, Path of Radiance, released on Fire Emblem's anniversary, April 20th in Japan, and October 17th in the US. On another new continent, Tellius, we follow Ike, a mercenary, as he gets involved in a race war between humans and a shape-shifting race called Lagus. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. I've actually never heard that word, spoken, and I just realized that I started recording this without double-checking on that, so I'm sorry. That's how I've always pronounced it in my head. He mainly seeks to end tensions between kingdoms rooted in the prejudices that humans have to Lagus. A sequel to this game titled Radiant Dawn, released in Japan on February 22nd of 2007, and in the US on November 5th of 2007. The plot basically covers multiple standpoints regarding the rebuilding and instability of certain kingdoms in Tellius. In 2008, we got Shadow Dragon, a remake of Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light. In 2010, we got another remake, New Mystery of the Emblem, a remake of Mystery of the Emblem, which is partially a remake of Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light. We really like Marth in this community. Things with Fire Emblem got a little slow after Path of Radiance's success. This next entry, Awakening, is credited with resurrecting the series in 2012. Lucky number 13! Awakening released in Japan on April 19th, 2012, and February 4th in the US. This story is the first to have Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light used as a reference point in a long time, since Genealogy of the Holy War. It takes place 2,000 years in the future, following the Elysian Prince Chrom, after his ragtag army, the Shepherds, helps rescue an amnesiac tactician, slowly learning they are the vessel for the evil dragon Grima, and the reason for Chrom's death, which his future daughter arrives in the past to put a stop to. The 14th entry in the series, Fates, was released as 3 different games. one where the protagonist, Korin, sides either with the Kingdom of Hoshido, the royals of which are their biological family, or the Kingdom of Nor, whose royals raised them. Caught in a war between the two, Korin must discover and fight against the real perpetuator behind it. I wrote perpetuator. I left the R out of that word in the script. I'm looking at perpetuator. The two game versions both released in Japan on June 25th, 2015, and in the US on February 19th of 2016. A joint version of the game released roughly a month after each region's initial release. I'm gonna tattle on myself. I actually completely skipped this one recording, but on April 20th of 2017 for Japan and May 19th of 2017 for the US, we got Echoes, Shadows of Valencia. It's just a remake of Gaiden. I kind of forgot it even exists. The first game with a single worldwide release date in the series, Three Houses, released on July 26th of 2019. It follows a young ex-mercenary Byleth through the player's choice of 3 different houses of students to serve as a professor to. Because this game relies so much on specific choices that the player makes, there are a lot of weird offshoots of storyline and stuff, but the main plot, at least to me, is the divisiveness brought on by religion and social class. Pretty heavy game. If you play it, it really does play with those topics on a very deep level, and I haven't played through every route, but yeah. Whether you agree or not is determined by your gameplay. And now we're caught up to today, 2023, where Engage just released on January 20th. If I would have planned better for this, I would have had it out on the day of release, but I took like a week too long of a break in there and I missed it. As of now, I personally don't know too much about the game because I haven't played it, and while I'm writing the script, actually, there isn't a lot of information because it's not out, but basically you play as Alir, who is tasked with collecting 12 rings to summon 12 main characters from past games to take down Grima again for some reason. As of the game's release, I'm recording this the day after. People say it's really cheesy, but it's really fun. Fire Emblem also has a mobile game, 2 Warriors-style games, and a Tokyo Mirage Sessions collab game. Multiple of the game's main characters have also made appearances in Smash Bros., namely Marth, Roy, Ike, Lucina, who is Chrom's daughter, Robin, who is the tactician from Awakening that I mentioned, Korin, Chrom himself, and Byleth. Now that you're fairly familiar with the series, it's time to get to know the fandom. Don't worry, we'll start with the good parts. I think for Fire Emblem being a relatively unknown game by most, there are a lot of artists and content creators that do amazing work. We've seen quite a few designs, and artists make a fair amount of merchandise for the series. Speaking of beautiful art, there's a Fire Emblem trading card game that features very intricate artwork of hundreds of the game's characters. It was recently discontinued, unfortunately, but you can still buy used cards or unopened packs online. A lot of fans kinda have this self-awareness of the game being kinda cheesy and basically anime chess. There's sort of this running joke that fans hate the game even, they just can't escape it, they're too far gone. Now for the bad. Starting with the most common issue across all media, people being pretentious over certain games or characters. In some ways, a few of the games are harder than others, meaning that fans who have beaten these games and claim them as the best entries can get a little overly serious about that opinion. Regarding characters, this infighting can get even worse. The mobile game Fire Emblem Heroes hosts a yearly popularity contest where players vote for what characters they'd like to see get a special in-game alternate. Sometimes these fun contests can turn into player-based wide rallies to vote for a particular character. Controversy arose in 2021's contest when players made a somewhat unanimous decision to mass vote for Gatekeeper, a nameless NPC from the recent installment Three Houses. Those in favor cited his charm that, despite being an NPC, what little interaction the player could have with him characterized Gatekeeper as a dedicated and caring soldier. Those opposed saw his inclusion as a waste of space for a character with more personality and depth, but in my opinion, depth is a little hard to come by in this game. Either way, he ended up winning first place in the men's division, beating out literally the godfather of the series, Marth. That brings us to another con, the fan service. Fan service can mean lots of different things for different games. For Smash Bros., it's putting certain characters in. For Pokemon, it's holding on to certain game mechanics that get introduced. For Kid Icarus, it's getting a game at all. Somewhere along the line, I'm pretty sure it was in Mystery of the Emblem, Intelligent Systems introduced the support system, where interactions between characters on the battlefield would eventually unlock conversational dialogue between them, each conversation making them more familiar with one another. All fun and dandy, a cute addition to an otherwise serious game. Well, when Awakening came out, it had you play as an avatar character, Robin, a basic blank slate for the player. Arguably, I don't actually believe that. Since this change was being made that the player character didn't already come with a canon gender or personality or partner, Intelligent Systems added S supports, where your character could reach a high enough support rank to actually marry a character. These marriage scenes would get special artwork and voice lines to make things extra romantic. Yuck. In Awakening, you could only exclusively marry the opposite gender. A point of contention for many fans is that despite both male and female Robin having the same experiences and relationship with Chrom, only the female avatar can marry him. But don't worry, male Robin x Chrom could be considered as very well near canon at this point, and I'm very in support of that. They are my favorite people in the world. I would write a whole video about them, I love them. Fates used this same system, adding one character that could be romanced by either gender, Corrin, Niles. He's kind of a stereotypical perv though, so I wouldn't quite call it all that positive representation. Three Houses amped up the options by quite a bit, with 5 male characters that can reach rank S with either character form: Linhardt, Gilbert, Alois, Jaritza, and Yuri, and 5 female characters that you can reach rank S with: Dorothea, Edelgard, Mercedes, Rhea, and Sothis. Some of these are kind of dubious as to whether or not they're platonic or not, so I kind of get it's kind of up to player interpretation. As for Engage, we don't know a whole lot, but but given that it's literally called Engage and it's about collecting rings, I'm hoping they'll all be biromantic. Good for them! Post-release Ryan here, this aged very well. The prominence of both canon and non-canon relationships can cause a lot of arguing and what I'll call sick opinions of characters. Again, if you're uncomfortable with discussions of incest and pedophilia, I'll leave a timestamp right here that you can skip to get back to the normal stuff. A problem that all fandom spaces have to varying degrees is pro-shipping. If you're not familiar with the term, it is used to describe fans who support relationships between characters that would be illegal in real life, such as incestuous or pedophilic relationships. I find that this behavior is unfortunately the most common in the fandoms of children's shows and anime. Particularly for anime spaces, you hear a lot of excuses like, oh, the age of consent is lower in Japan, or oh, they're more taboo over there. Like, no, they're not. People are just despicable human beings, and unfortunately, we see a lot of those kinds of people in the entertainment industry being held to the highest honors. That's everywhere, and it's not any more tolerable here or there. Anyway, with Fire Emblem being classified as an anime-style game for the most part, it has a couple tropes in it that fit in with that. In most of the games, the main protagonist is a minor, a teenager to be more exact. The only exceptions I can find to this are Chrom, Robin, Corrin, and Byleth, who are all between 19 and 21-ish. Occasionally, there will be a character or two in your army that's even younger than that, like single digits young. Most of the time, these characters are Manicheets, half-dragon, half-human hybrids that are thousands of years old. Of course, herein lies the excuse that fans use to defend themselves when they draw them in a lewd manner or refer to them in a lewd manner, that they're technically thousands of years old. But the fact is, they're still an adolescent version of their species because there are adult and elderly Manicheets shown in some of the games. Also, there's the fact that they literally look like little kids. She's not your wife, dude, you're scaring her. She needs to do her 3rd grade science fair project and she can't focus with a predator running around. The game itself doesn't do anything to combat this either. If anything, it encourages it, and that is one of the bad things about the series. With the introduction of player supports, the fact is that practically your entire army is now subject to your advances, and this includes minors. For example, in Awakening, the player character Robin, who again is between 19 and 21, can marry some of the 2nd generation child characters. The male player can even marry Chrom's sister Lissa, who is 15, and his future daughter Lucina, who is 17. Male Robin and Lucina is actually one of the most popular pairings to fans, which isn't just gross but also just stupid because I said so. This one gives me the ick even just vibe-wise. For an example that's just fan-isolated and not represented in the game, usually coming from the older titles, there are a few. There's a lot of art of Roy and his teacher Cecilia. Roy is 15 and she's, well, an adult. Another problem topic that Fire Emblem seems to bring up a lot are incestuous relationships, and my god, there's a lot of it, and most of it is canon too. The excuse that people that want to defend it use to do so is that the games are set back in pretty much medieval times, when that was perfectly acceptable. You know, the Game of Thrones excuse. Like, yeah, let's make a completely fictional and fantastical world where we can literally decide what goes into it. But to keep things realistic, we'll throw in some incest, and make sure not to include any people of color either. One very prominent canon example is between Deirdre and the man she's forced to marry, Arvis. At some point in the game, they find out they're related, and that's why her weird Naga blood and Arvis's same or similar yet evil blood could produce a child capable of hosting Loptuous. This next example is a lot of work to explain, but I'll do it for the sake of the argument I'll make afterwards. So in Fates, you're basically caught between your two families, one by blood and one by history, so as is expected, the family tree is complicated, therefore necessary to explain. It begins with two sisters, Mikoto and Arate. Mikoto births the player Korin, later marrying the Hoshidan royal Sumeragi, who has 4 children, Ryoma, Hinoka, Takumi, and Sakura. This makes Korin the step-sibling to the Hoshidan royals, so not quite blood, but that is how they put it in the game. Mikoto's sister Arate has a child of her own, Azura, with the king of Vala, which is for all intents and purposes a middle ground to Hoshido and Nor, then marries the Norian king Garen, who had previously had children with 4 other women, producing Xander, Camilla, Leo, and Elise, making them the step-cousins of Korin. So last time, one quick run through, the Hoshidans are their step-siblings, the Norians are their step-cousins, and Azura is their cousin. And yet, despite all of that, Korin can marry any of them depending on which gender you're playing as. Even worse, remember how I said Korin is at the very least 19. As the male avatar, you can marry the youngest sibling from either family, who are both around 13 at the least and 15 at the most. A fan-isolated example of this is Ephraim and Erica. I kinda think that's more of a joke, but I'm sure there's some weirdos out there who actually like it. I don't want to end this on the bad for the sake of the people who had to skip all that last part, so I guess I'll talk about the officially licensed merchandise. Yippee! Starting with the absolute basics, each character in Smash Bros. Has their own amiibo figure, and that includes all the Fire Emblem characters. They range in price due to rarity, and you can't quite get your hands on a female Robin or alternate form Byleth yet. There's also a line of official plushies that are so very cute. Characters include Marth, Roy, Ike, Lucina, female Korin, the 3 house leads from 3 houses, Edelgard, Dimitri, and Claude, both forms of Byleth, and their companion in the game, Sothis. Intelligent Systems has also delved into some more interesting merch, like the Armory collection. The primary product in this line are replicas of some of the characters' swords on a miniature scale, attached to a keyring I think? A very big keyring if that's what it is. The swords available as of 2023 include Marth's Falchion, Roy's Sword of Seals, Ike's Ragnell, Crom/Lucina's Exalted Falchion, Korin's Yato, and Byleth's Creator Sword. They also sell more miniature weapons not attached to anything, just to collect. This part of the Armory collection includes Sigurd's Tyrfing and the weapons of his 2 allies, Quan's Gaibolg and Eldigan's Mistletoe. All 3 come in one set. Another set of 3 includes Eliwood's Durandal as well as the weapons of his 2 close friends, Lynn's Solkati and Hector's Armads. The final set of 3, and these names are the worst to pronounce, comes with Edelgard's Emir, Dimitri's Ardbar, and Claude's Failnaught. You can also get a miniature version of the Fire Emblem Shield. At some point, you could also get an official tea set. I think the window to get them has closed, but that doesn't mean you can't look around for people reselling them. The tea set itself is a replica of the one featured in a Tea Time minigame in 3 houses, and comes with different tea flavors featured in the game. I wanted one of these so bad, and I can't get one now, but I want to say they were pretty expensive. There's also stuff that comes with special releases of the game, like I want to say that Engaged came with tarot cards. Like actual, they're so cute. If I can find a picture of them, that's what's on the screen right now. I want to chew on them. I want them so bad. If none of that piques your interest and you're rather a figure or statue collector and Amiibo aren't doing it for you, there's a couple options. Intelligent Systems themselves sells 1/7 scale statues of Marth, Roy's close friend Lilina, Lynn, Ike, alternate form Byleth, and Princess Veronica from the mobile game. Otherwise, there's a few figures you can buy from Good Smile Company that are officially licensed. These include the ones I already named, but they also include the 3 houses characters Edelgard, Bernadetta, Dimitri, Felix, Claude, and Lizithia. I know they had a Lucina figure at some point and a Marth Nendoroid, but they aren't listed anymore for whatever reason. Alright, that's pretty much all you need to know about Fire Emblem. Of course, if anyone was ever interested enough for me to do a video on a single installment, that would absolutely be something I would consider. There's so many characters I can talk about. There are certain relationships in the games that are so well written but get overlooked because they're like quote-unquote side characters in your army. I think that's a little bit unfair. Thank you for watching the video so much, and I'll see you in the next one.